Today, I'll examine diversity in the workplace through several practical questions. Where women and people of color work, how compensation compares, and what roles they hold as managers and business owners. These patterns matter because they shape opportunity, representation, and the everyday experience of work. We'll also consider why understanding these issues is important across business environments, not only for the individuals directly affected, but for organizations seeking to build fairer and more effective workplaces. This topic matters because workforce diversity directly influences how organizations perform, innovate, and compete. It's not only a social responsibility, it's a core business variable. Companies in the top quartile for diversity are 35% more likely to outperform their industry peers financially. That connection makes it important to look closely at inequities in pay, representation, and advancement. For future business leaders, understanding these patterns is essential to making better decisions and building organizations where talent can contribute and succeed. This slide shows that women's representation across the workforce remains uneven. Women are overrepresented in healthcare, education, social services, and administrative roles, while STEM, construction, transportation, and senior executive positions still skew heavily male. There has been meaningful progress. Women now hold about 52% of management and professional occupations. But that figure does not tell the whole story. Concentration in lower-paying sectors persists, meaning gains in representation have not yet translated into equal access across every field or equal economic outcomes. This slide highlights how occupational patterns are shaped by more than individual choice. Persons of color are disproportionately represented in service, agricultural, and manual labor jobs, where workers often face lower wages, fewer benefits, and fewer opportunities to advance. These patterns reflect structural barriers, including unequal access to education, limited professional networks, and bias in hiring. Together, these forces influence which jobs are available, who gets considered for advancement, and how racial and ethnic groups become concentrated in particular industries over time. This slide highlights that the gender pay gap is not experienced equally by all women. Compared with every dollar earned by a white man, women earn significantly less, and the disparity becomes considerably wider when race and ethnicity are considered. Hispanic and Latino women earn just 54 cents on the dollar, representing the steepest disparity shown here. The key point is that gender and race intersect, compounding disadvantage. That means equity analysis must examine multiple dimensions at once, rather than treating the gender pay gap as a single, uniform experience. This slide highlights how racial inequality appears in both earnings and wealth. Black workers earn about 76 cents for every dollar earned by white workers in similar roles, while Hispanic workers earn approximately 73 cents, reflecting occupational concentration and wage floors. Asian workers show higher aggregate earnings, at about $1.15 per dollar, but that figure conceals substantial differences among Asian subgroups. The wealth gap is even more pronounced, with median white family net worth nearly 10 times that of black families. These gaps persist after accounting for education, experience, and job title, pointing to systemic causes rather than individual choices. Women make up nearly half of the workforce, but their representation declines at each level of corporate leadership. At entry-level management, women hold about 48% of roles, close to parity. By mid-level management, that share falls to roughly 40%, illustrating the broken rung, the barriers that can prevent individual contributors from reaching their first management position. At the top, only about 28% of C-suite executives are women. Female CEOs among Fortune 500 companies reach a record, but still represent fewer than 10%. This slide highlights a persistent leadership pipeline problem. Persons of color make up nearly half of entry-level employees, yet their representation declines at every level of advancement. The key issue is not simply entry into the workforce, but progression through it. This leaky pipeline reflects several connected barriers: limited access to mentors and sponsors, microaggressions that affect workplace experience, and systemic bias in performance evaluations and promotion decisions. Together, these factors can restrict advancement and help explain why representation, remains lower in management and senior leadership. Women and people of color are driving important growth in entrepreneurship, with women-owned businesses expanding at twice the rate of all businesses over the past decade. But growth in business count does not necessarily translate into equal scale. Women and minority-owned firms often have fewer employees and lower revenue, reflecting unequal access to capital, contracts, and markets. The funding gap is especially stark. Venture capital for Black and Latina founders remains under 2% of total investment, creating a structural barrier to building high-growth companies. This slide highlights the structural barriers that can keep inequity in place, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that is difficult to break without action at multiple levels. Hiring bias is one factor. Studies show that resumes with white-sounding names receive 50% more callbacks. Occupational segregation also matters, as women and minorities are often steered toward lower-paying industries and roles. Finally, mentorship alone is not enough. Mentors offer advice, while sponsors actively advocate for advancement, and people of color have fewer sponsors in senior positions. The path to equity starts with measuring the gaps, pay, representation, and ownership, so we can act on them. It continues by building inclusive systems, supporting minority entrepreneurs through capital and networks, and recognizing intersectionality. Race and gender can compound disadvantage. Equity requires multiple lenses and deliberate action.